do the table topic. This will be a rather quick one, but it's going to dovetail nicely with what George was talking about, which is creating a connection. And this relates to the way I wrote it was specifically regarding interviews, but it relates to your networking as well. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So what I want to talk about is the secret impact you may be having on your interviews and not even know it. And the problem or challenge is to move it from unconscious to conscious, because once it moves into conscious, you have control over it. So how many of you would agree or disagree with this statement that interview success is determined only by how qualified you are?
Nope.
I disagree.
Okay, good.
I agree.
You all passed the test. I don't need to do any of the rest of this presentation. So looking at it from the hiring manager's perspective, there's 3 hidden questions that every interviewer asks. And they don't ask you directly, they're asking themselves. Is, can you do the job? And that's usually taken care of in the pre-screen and the application process. Do you qualify, right? Do you want the job? Are you showing appropriate motivation? And will you fit in? You know, attitude, demeanor, agreeableness. So the question is fit in with what? Well, it's the team culture as defined by the hiring manager. Remember, it's his team or her team. It's their culture. And yes, there's the question of the greater company, but when it comes to the hiring manager making the decision, the question is my team, my culture? And 2 example stories that I want to give you from when I was hiring for IT professionals is I'd asked this one young lady, she came in and I pre-screened and I said, you know, we work in a data center. So are you familiar with working with mainframe and, you know, large app scale systems working around them, right? You won't be working on the mainframe, but large scale enterprise systems. Oh, yes. Well, she got in. I asked the question again and she goes, oh no, large systems terrify me. Well, my boss went, as she was walking out of the office, she folded up her book and was walking out of the office saying, Ellen, we'll finish up this interview. Thank you for coming. Blah. She's walking out the door. Interview was over, right? But another gentleman came in and, you know, and I did the same thing I did for everyone. At first, I'll give them a tour of the place so they can get a sense for the setting, right? And try to glean some information from that. So it's the data center. Here's the data center. You know, here's the big mainframes. Here's the team you'll be working on, yada, yada, yada. And then, you know, we're going to go upstairs and interview here next in the break room. Before we go, the bathroom's over there. Do you want coffee, water, anything? The guy says, 1 second. And he reaches up and he unties his tie and takes it off and stuffs it in his pocket. So he came you know, suit and tie. But what he'd saw, and that told me right away that I wanted to hire him. As long as he didn't mess up in the interview, I wanted him. And the reason being is because he adjusted to fit in with what he was seeing. So first off, he perceived it and saw it. Secondly, he adjusted. He adjusted himself to match the environment he was seeing, because there was all business well, actually it wasn't even business casual. It was casual jeans and t-shirts, right? Was the work environment. So he adjusted down appropriately. And I knew right away that's not something that I could train, right? That was something that came with his character, and that was a great opportunity for him as a mentor, which is what I was hiring for. And he did get the job, and he excelled at it. So hiring managers' decisions are based on emotion and logic. The decision itself is based on emotion. How do I feel about this candidate? But the decisions are justified on the logic. What skills and experience do they have? And they can make exceptions if there's a gap in there for the right fit, usually. So sometimes they can't, but generally speaking, they can. So the question is don't focus on your skills and miss how you're making them feel about you. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. There's a great book called Micro Messaging. And the headline here I put was "What You Don't Say Matters." So what are micro messages? They're those small, subtle body language, tone of voice, eye contact or lack thereof, facial expressions, and everybody knows this and has a sense for it. And I'll show you an example here. So as you can see in this thing that I wrote up, right, Joe and John pass their boss in the hallway, and while John gets a passing greeting, Joe really gets a big smile and a slap on the back and a big greeting and thanks for all the hard work. And, you know, John just standing there like a fly on the wall. And so they're both similar work history and skills. Who's getting the next promotion?
With the pet on the back.
Even mosquitoes get pats on the back. So as you can see, it's pretty clear who's the favored person, right? That's what micro messaging is. You can know nothing else about the interactions or what caused it or what didn't, and they can be either supportive or negative. So think back to your last few interviews. How well did you do at fitting in? How well were you regarded by the interviewer, or what micro messages did they send to you? Does anybody have an example? I'm not going to call on anyone because I know that's embarrassing. So.
Why not, Alan? These guys have already been in the military. They've been used to get called out on.
That's right. You come prepared or don't come at all.
Right.
I'm active duty. I haven't interviewed in like 17 years for a job.
All right. Well, then this will be something to pay attention to.
I was going to say, Alan, this is Mike.
Yeah.
So when I interviewed, basically it was a networking meeting with my boss, and I brought my sheet along from the 20-minute networking thing and had information on that, and that piqued his interest that I did the research, and had some background and was prepared and had the questions. So, I mean, I think that kind of just sent the vibe to him that, oh, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. If he's prepared for this, he'll probably be prepared for his job. So
nice. So you were fitting in.
Yeah.
I like it. Thanks for the example. So think about, everybody says don't make snap decisions. And categorically, according to the process, that's not true. Unless you've networked with them previously, the interview, which you should be doing, by the way, the interview is all about a snap decisions about how you influence them to feel about you. So that's not necessarily your attitude or behavior, but it's how they come together to form the opinion that they have of you. So as you're thinking about this, right, were you maybe nervous, or were you focused on your what you were going to say rather than how you were making them feel, right? Well, the problem with not prepping for this in the interview prep phase is you're allowing them to form opinions about you without your input. And remember, they're making snap decisions about you. They only have an hour to determine if you will fit in and if you want the job. So this is the interactive portion. How can we integrate this into your interviews and networking? What positive micro messages do you want to send, and how are you going to do that? Thoughts and opinions. All are valid.
So one of the things that I've done, Ellen, is obviously with the way interviews are going right now, typically it starts out with a phone screen. And so obviously the person that's calling you, they can't see you face to face. So they're not able to judge your interactions that way.
Right.
But what I've attempted to do is to say something very simple and subtle when they ask a question. It's like, oh, if you were here right now, you could see a smile on my face.
Love that.
And I've had some pretty good reactions from that. I've had other folks, there's this, you don't hear anything on the other end, and it's kind of like they're taken back by that. But the intent is, I'm trying to convey to them that this is something you don't need to worry about it. I understand what you're saying. And so it's just one more way, like you said, to hopefully send a positive message that, the answer is definitely something that they should be feel good about.
I love that.
I have another example or idea?
Yeah.
So another one is like making sure that, like, you set the right tone, especially like during this time, if you're not really seeing the person face to face. It's really good to set like really the right tone when you're like speaking. I usually like pump myself up before I start speaking.
Yeah.
And I get myself excited. So when I talk to that person, they can see that like I'm really interested and I'm open to listening. And it kind of creates, it kind of influences the interviewer to actually respond in a really positive way, and that kind of builds up, and then at the end you'll have like a really good interview, I think.
Nicely said, Dennis. Thank you.
I have one, just making sure that the people you're talking to originally. When you go in the interview, you don't want to like not know that person's background. For instance, like I was talking with somebody who I didn't do that initially with, and this is a while ago, but I didn't know that they were a doctor, and I think they were originally kind of mad that I didn't call them Dr. So-and-so rather than Mr. So-and-so. But I caught myself later, and I apologized and said how much I value, their title, and I know how hard that is to earn that. And I think they like calmed back down after that. But yeah, some people get kind of touchy about that kind of stuff.
Smart recovery, Nick.
Yeah.
Kind of on that note, I guess the other parts with this throwing a comment about smiling and stuff, like I've kind of learned for myself that, like, especially with the phone interviews or stuff, even though they can't see you, if you actually do physically put a smile on your face when you try to talk, like you kind of just already puts you in a different tone. Like
Yep.
I actually wrote an article about creating a wow at every particular process step of the interviewing process. And we all can relate to this, but when you're on the phone screen, it's really important for people to actually dress up for a phone screen. They think it's crazy, but I'm like, it reminds me of the time when I wore my military uniform. Every time I put my dress greens on or blues, I always stood an inch taller and spoke a lot more confidence. And it definitely comes across. I mean, that's definitely, those micro messages that can come off either positively or negatively.
I love it. Thank you, George.
Yeah, I've got to agree with George on that, and take it just a little further also. When doing a telephone interview, of course, your smile does come through. I know, even if you may have to say, if you can see me, you see I was smiling, but if they can hear you, they can hear the smile. It comes through in the voice, and I think it's really important. I do this. I try to do this with every call I get. Is before I actually, pick up the phone or push the talk button, I try to just smile, and then hi, David here, and I think it comes through. The other thing that I've always tried to encourage people to do just before their interview. Usually, you're in a waiting room for 5, 10, 15 minutes before we're in the lobby before you get called in. And I think it's really a good exercise to have 3 things in your mind. Think of 3 things that always make you smile. It could be family, it could be a hobby, and that, like was said before, puts you in the proper mindset. It gets the chemicals in your brain doing the right thing so that you are in a good spot. You're happy and you're smiling and you're ready to have a positive interview.
I have something I would like to add as well. I had the pleasure of actually communicating with Ameriprise on the career veteran fair, and my main reason for actually communicating with them was the fact that one of the companies that I used to work with a long time ago, we actually had a partnersh 'with. So that was another reason why I was kind of attracted to the fact of actually wanting to talk with somebody. And turns out that partnership that we had with them a long time ago actually carried over in the interview process with Ameriprise. I've already heard back from them twice already in regards to opportunities with the company, but it was something that led from one thing to another. They worked, I worked with a company that supported people with disabilities, and Ameriprise has always been one of those companies that partnered with companies that nonprofits that did work like that. So one thing kind of led to another, but as I said before, it did lead to a good rapport with them. And as I said before, I've also heard from them twice already in regards to opportunities with their company. So it was a positive experience.
Nicely done, Floyd.
Hey, the other thing too, Alan, that I wanted to add is that a couple of things. Actually, I actually did a short video on my Instagram account on this, and just noticed it with the increase of Zoom meetings, Zoom interviews. It's really important for us all to show up our very best. So a couple of things that we really need to look at. Look at the background that you are posting from in a video, right? If it's on a solid wall, and if you got 80s posters of Twisted Sister and everything else, or you've got a bunch of, a mess going on, which is currently in my office right now downstairs, you definitely want to make sure that's cleaned up and clean, presenting your best self, right? Organized. If you can find just a little corner in the home or the office area, whatever the case may be. But you want to make sure, your background, everybody's looking around now. The second thing is making sure that you can raise your computer, your laptop, or whatever, or your camera to eye level, or looking slightly up, not looking down like you're looking down into somebody's 6-foot grave, right? And then of course, lighting. So if you can't afford one of those cheap ring lights that are about 20, 30 bucks, get a small desktop light or whatever, and put it, slightly in front of the camera, but that they can't see you, because then they can see your face. You're not in the dark. You're not like, trying to come out of running at 7 o'clock right now at night. So all those things will help you come off in your best self if you're doing a video networking meeting, video interviewing meeting. And by the way, it's a good percentage of time when you're networking with somebody the first time, they potentially could actually be your next boss. So you want to make sure that you come off of your best self.
Love it. These are all great suggestions.
I can also relate to that, because almost everybody that I talked to on for the Veterans Fair, everybody had a great background. So I've noticed that a few times that I've actually worked with contractors like Robert Half Technologies, for example, a recent time with them. They weren't properly dressed for it. They were in sweatpants. I don't even know what the background was on it, but I actually had a necktie and everything on for the interaction, because, as you said before, you have to put forth your best effort in regard to looking professional and selling that professionalism. But when you don't see it on the other side of that equation, it almost feels like, okay, so what did I actually dress up for? I guess mentally speaking, you have to do it pretty much for yourself.
I like it.
I guess I can comment on that too with the background. Like even at the career fair, like I was actually at my house, not here, at my parents now, but with my background, I have my desk and everything is all nice and organized, and I have like my deployment flag and stuff, whatever that's in my background, and that actually almost was conversation starter for a lot of people of, like, oh yeah, like where'd you serve? Where'd you go? Like, whatever. So I guess it almost puts some things at ease too, if you have the right thing that's in there too.
I like that, putting them at ease.
I just want to add like one more thing. like another thing that we can do is like trying to make the interviewer feel at ease, because it's not only us who might be like a little bit uncomfortable when it comes to like, or stressed out when it comes to like interview. So one thing I really like to do is that, like, one thing I really like about like the culture in the military is that we say good morning, good afternoon, and like, and also be like, treat people like with respect. And usually like during interviews, because of maybe we're like a little bit stressed or like maybe uncomfortable, we forget to say those things. And usually like when you say that, it kind of helps to it helps to have it helps you to have like a really good conversation once you ask the interviewer like how they're really doing, like really genuinely asking them how well they're doing.
Yep.
And just being respectful and smiling, and trying to make them feel comfortable as well.
Dennis, that's an excellent response, man. Well done. In fact, that's something that I was going to regard, or I was going to ask people is do you regard this person as a peer or as a potential friend? Because if you do, and it has a different communication context than if you regard them as a potential boss or taskmaster, right? Those connotations have different responses in our physiology. So like Dennis was saying, is that brings about that messages of caring and compassion. And that's something they're going to respond to because we're all human. So here's from the book, Micro Messaging. Here are top 10 things to send positive messages in a general sense, right? This is in all situations, not just interviews, but so they're saying, seek the opinions of your coworkers, establish truly personal bonds, use questions to show your interest in someone else, never fail to credit others for their good ideas, learn and attempt to control your facial expressions, become a great listener, solicit other people's participation. Imagine doing that in an interview. Greet others warmly and with respect, maintain a constructive air during disagreements, and eliminate interruptions during your conversations. One little tip on that last one, I learned this from a recruiter who I don't remember her name, but I'll forever be thankful. She taught me in an interview to keep the answer concise, which I do by, so do you have this skill? Yes, I gained this skill the last 3 years that I worked at Best Buy. And then she taught me to say, and I can explain further if you like. Because one of the challenges that I had was running at the mouth. And so I'd keep talking and keep talking and keep talking. And that technique helped me control that. And what it does is it allows the other person in the conversation to have a feeling of control and input. So the interruptions that I eliminated were my own.
That's great advice, Alan.
Thank you. I wish I could take credit for it, but somebody gave it to me, so I'm sharing it.
And the reason why I say that is there's a lot of hiring managers that listen specifically for the fact that you're listening to them. And if you happen to interrupt them once in a while because like you said, you're excited to share with them your skills and experience, they don't listen to that. All they know is you're interrupting them, and you're probably not going to be a very good listener.
Right.
So that's very important.
Yeah, I would say your first networking meeting, you should split up your time 70-30. Listen to them 70% of the time. 30% should be, tell me about yourself, 30 seconds to a minute, and then how can I help you? Make sure it's clear and defined. And then 70% trying to figure out who are they, how can you help them? Because again, people want to be a part of other people who are genuinely interested in them.
Amen. So was this helpful? Was there anything that anybody learned that they can use? If so, please share that with the group, because that's going to be helpful for others. Was there anything new that you learned?
I think what
or
you
maybe
just
seeing things in a different way. Go ahead.
I think what you just said, that's actually, I think, beneficial.
Yay.
You know, I appreciate all the reminders. I wouldn't say there's a ton that new that I learned, but it's really good refresher and brings it right back to the surface of things that I feel like I've known, or I know all the concepts. It's really helpful. You know, when you think about people wanting to talk about themselves, that's why we interrupt, because we want to tell you more about us. And I think what you were saying and what I was hearing is they also want to tell you about their company. They want to tell you how good they are, and are you good enough for them? And you're telling them, you know, so it does become this battle, but I totally understand where you need to submit to that and listen more and speak when showing that respect. So
Right.
Good reminders.
Thank you. What else was helpful? Go ahead.
I would just say that it's calming for me because I got some interviews coming up, and like I always like stress out about not knowing every single technical detail that they could possibly ask me. But like you said, just make sure you go in there and show them the person that they, you know, that you want to show them, basically with your personality and your questioning and like just your mannerisms, and like you'll get a lot farther than just knowing every single answer, because they know that you're not going to know everything right off the bat too. So they just want to know what kind of person you are.
Yep. Yeah, this is less like a promotion board and more like a first date, a get to know you, right? Other comments that you want to share?
Just the fact, Ellen, that it takes a lot of discipline to do what you just described. Even though it does sound easy, it's very difficult, because if you're on a 30-minute screen with a hiring manager that you'd ever met before, and you don't really have much knowledge of their background, and you spend the first 10 to 15 minutes going over a little bit about the company, a little bit about the culture there, a little bit about the role, and then they start asking you a couple questions. You've basically got 10 to 15 minutes. You got a one shot to tell them or to help them understand that you're the right person for this job. And so when you start getting into that, you really have to stay disciplined and not continue to keep running, you know, off on a tangent about what you can do and what you can't do. And
that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good point there, Carl. You know, what you guys need to do is be able to articulate, because they're going to the first question, tell me a little bit about yourself. So you need to make sure that you're answering that question in 3 minutes or less, right? High overview, maybe it's 3 or 4 industries you've worked at, you know, maybe something significant in that 3 minutes. Then they can turn around and drill down based upon those 3 minutes. And then the other thing you need to do is make sure you articulate 2 or 3 questions that are really specific, you know, like, let's say, you know, you hire the perfect candidate and you're doing the review in 6 months. What would this person achieve in those 6 months? Boom. Then you can write those down. And then what you do is you follow it up with after the meeting and say, listen, here's what I heard, and this is what I would do. And you give examples of what you've done in the past, and you align it, and then you should be able to move on to the next round. So you're just aligning the discussion.
Agreed.
Dennis, did you have a comment that you wanted to make?
No, I was just gonna say, like, I agree with Carl. Like, you know, it can be like really difficult, especially like, you know, after, you know, getting like a lot of rejections, you know, from multiple job applications, and, you know, maybe like even interviews, like first, like phone screening and stuff like that. It can be like really difficult, you know, to be like really present and to have like to be like in a really good mental state. So, you know, like for me, like usually what I do is that, like, you know, in order to get like in a really good mental space, I usually, like, you know, go for a run or whatever before during the day. I mean, I usually run every day, but like, you know, once I do something that I really enjoy, like something that will put me like in a really good mental state, then like I will be like really ready to become like present and to listen actively and to participate in a really productive and meaningful way.
I love it. So is this helpful?
Yes, definitely.
Good, good. All right. Well, if there's other feedback, I am ready to receive it. Otherwise, I'm going to click off the recording at this point so that we can post this to YouTube.